talk a little bit about the idea of social Darwinism. And first of all, I'd like to know from you, how do you feel about this idea of natural selection in society? Maybe who can explain to us what it is exactly? What is this theory, and maybe what are your opinions about it? Olivia?
I think it's like saying that you're kind of born with this certain like ability, and the people who make it have a greater natural selection than the people who don't make it. Kind of like survival of the fittest in a way.
Right,
But
yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that, yes. So those who are naturally the strongest, the most intelligent, usually the best looking, tend to be, at least for women, I think, tend to be the most successful, the easiest in society. And so the idea behind this is that people, for the most part, deserve what they get in life and deserve what success they have because they've been able to achieve it on their own with their natural abilities. And so that leads to this idea of what's called laissez-faire government, which you've probably heard this term before, and that's the notion that society and the economy can regulate itself based on natural competition and natural selection, and the government doesn't necessarily need to be involved and regulate anything. And there are both pros and cons to that idea. What are some positive ideas or effects behind using social Darwinism as an economic theory? What are some good things about it? Maybe according to the book or according to things that you've seen in your own life.
like maybe the people who have the most money, like the millionaires, they wouldn't be looked down upon it as much if it seemed to be like a natural thing that they were supposed to be kind of above a social class or something.
Yeah, okay, sure. What else, Marnay?
I talked about that they donated a lot, so that was kind of one of their reasoning points of why, like, them being an individual entrepreneur, that it was good because they always donated to organizations.
Right. So they could, if people made the argument, well, you guys have, this, whatever, 80% of the country's money right now, and other people are starving, they could say, well, but look at all of these things that we did, which was true. We have, if you've heard of like Rockefeller Plaza in New York, everyone knows that name. Obviously that comes from John D. Rockefeller. And Carnegie, we have the Carnegie Foundation, which helps to fund like PBS, if you watch PBS at all. They did a lot of outreach and helping to set up programs that have really benefited millions of people across the country. What else did they do as far as their business strategies? Maddie?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is Carnegie Hall in New York? Is that
Yes. Yep.
Andrew?
Yep. Andrew Carnegie. Yep. Exactly. Pretty much anytime you hear the words, the names Carnegie or Rockefeller, it's these guys.
Oh.
The steel tycoon and the oil tycoon. Yeah. So, and that word tycoon is thrown a lot. It's thrown around a lot in the book. What is a tycoon?
They're like the leader, kind of.
The leader of something, yeah. Typically somebody who is a leader of a huge business or corporation who got to be the top by themselves at some point. So, okay. What about anything else? More positives that came out of this this idea of social Darwinism? I think that one of the positive things is that it inspires people to work hard and to use their natural given talents to succeed in life. So the idea is, do what you're good at, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. They also really set this model of business for other Americans, and inspired people to work really hard as well. Because both of these guys they came from, they were what we call rags to riches, right, which everyone has heard of, I'm sure. They started out poor themselves and were able to bring themselves up and, you know, become the heads of these multi-million-dollar companies. So, good. What about some negatives to this theory of social Darwinism? Yeah.
Can you talk about how, like, in their business places, they paid their workers really low wages?
Mhm.
And so they had, like, some good strategies that helped them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't necessarily fair to their workers or the people that were, like, buying their products, because the prices would, like, go down and then go up, and it was
Right.
constantly shifting.
Right. As we've seen before in Europe, whenever you have one person that's in total control of something, whether it's the government or a business, or sometimes that can lead to corruption or, you know, you've all played Monopoly, I'm sure. They talk about monopolies in the book, where one corporation has control over all of the other ones below it. And so we have these ideas of like vertical integration, and let me do a couple of little visuals for you. Obviously, vertical implies, right, up and down. So this is where, like, for example, let's say we've got this major steel company, and they are taking over the suppliers that they need. So we have these supplier organizations like maybe we've got a coal industry that helps supply fuel and things to the steel factories. You might have like railroads we rely on for steel production. Iron, right, is the base of steel. So this company is now owning all of these sub-companies that help to produce this product anyway, and that way they can regulate the costs of things, they can decide who they want to hire, and they basically have like a full monopoly over all these suppliers who they needed to rely on anyway. Now they can make all of the rules. So vertical in that, you know, literally it's an up-down process. And then horizontal consolidation, on the other hand, is where you have like maybe 3 or 4 or however many steel companies. They all make the same product. And they decide that rather than trying to make it on their own and compete with each other, they're just going to all consolidate and form one huge steel company. And then they have a monopoly over that product, steel. So these are two business methods that were used a lot during this time, and that's why we have such big companies that are coming out of this time period. Before it was all of these individual little companies. So both good and bad. Okay, what are some other negatives of social Darwinism? Marnie?
Because of all the techniques that they used of like buying out suppliers, they made a lot of like small businesses go out.
Yes.
And kind of ran them out of town.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It eliminates, it puts in the idea of natural competition, right? But the business model of it takes out competition because we only have one supplier of like one product. Okay, good. What about, let's think about like socially. If the government's not going to be involved in anything, they're not going to regulate anything, what does that mean then for people who might not be so naturally strong or intelligent, or maybe who have disabilities, or for children? What happens to them if they're just kind of left to fend for themselves? What does that mean, Holly?
They're kind of like put lower on the food chain, I guess, and
Yeah.
they're made to do all the dirty work.
Right.
Because people think that since they have like disadvantages to their body or whatever,
Mhm.
they can't necessarily become successful because they don't have the ability to.
Right, yeah. Okay, good. And there's no one on their team. They're just kind of out there to fend for themselves. So in some ways, like we said, that's good because it is a motivator for people to improve their own lives and to work hard. But for some groups that really don't have much control over that, like children or disabled people or sometimes minority groups, this can become an issue. So the goal then is to find a system that balances the ability to have, free enterprise and business and healthy competition, but also provide services and safety nets for people who cannot get there on their own. And that's what we've been arguing over in politics for the longest time. It's difficult to figure out what's best for, the majority of people. So, anyway, during this time, it went in the opposite direction, though. We had very much a laissez-faire government that was not involved at all. So then they try to come in and regulate things, but that's always very controversial as well. So anyways, okay, good. Any other comments about social Darwinism? Had you heard of this theory before? Probably, okay. All right, good. Okay, I have a couple more notes for you. Does everyone have everything that's up here? Okay. since fewer people are controlling more of the company, or more of the country's money and resources. So we have lots of top dog type guys that are running everything. And that's due to this consolidation of companies, so the merging of the large companies coming together and working together. So then since we have all these companies coming together and forming one, this eliminates competition, which is good for the big companies, but bad for like the mom and pop companies and the little individual entrepreneurs like Marnay mentioned. And that's kind of what America was founded on anyway, the little guy, right, having the power. Now it's switched over. These big business tycoons like Rockefeller were often called robber barons, which is a term that came up in the Middle Ages that had to do with the system of feudalism. And because they were pretty ruthless, the goal was to make a lot of money, and and to create really successful businesses, which they did, but they often had to use not so moral tactics in order to become very successful. So, and obviously we see that today in companies as well. So the government decides to install this Sherman Antitrust Act in an effort to try to prevent companies from having monopolies over everything else, but they weren't really able to effectively enforce it because the companies were just so powerful at this point. Meanwhile, in the South, the poor South is still trying to pick up the pieces from the Civil War. They don't have a lot of industry down there. They're mostly agricultural, meaning farms, basically, and plantations. And so northern companies don't want to invest anything in the South because there's not a whole lot going on there. But they still have a hold over all of the major businesses that are in the South, like the railroads, for example. And so the South is really at the mercy of the North when it comes to transporting their crops and things, because the North owns all of the railroads. So this will cause some disputes then later on, and we'll see that in the next section. Let's see here. Okay. Any questions at all? Or comments? Okay. If you'd like, you can go ahead and get started then on the last section of chapter 6. And like I said, we'll take tomorrow and Thursday to talk about it. So you don't have to have your homework finished until Thursday. You can take 2 nights for that. And also, are there any questions about your projects for Monday?
Could I have the little paper about
Mhm.
that?
Mhm. Just let me know if everything makes sense, Maria. No, you didn't need to do that, that's fine. Yeah.
I'm planning on doing like the poster kind of thing for like intervention.
Sure.
But it'd be better if I like printed the picture in like black and white, since it's like a back then kind of thing.
Maybe, yes, it might give it more of an old world feeling. Yeah,
Okay.
you can do that, it's up to you. Matt brings up a good point with she asked if you need to include like a works cited page with your project, which I won't make you do that, but I'm sure all of you guys from writing papers know which sites to steer clear of and which ones are more credible. So, you know, the .orgs, the .edus, those are .govs, you know, and reputable sites like the History Channel site is great to look up information, National Geographic, you know, just be careful of like, you know, blogs and Wikipedia and that kind of thing, because you never know if your information is accurate on those or not, so. But if something looks awry, I can look it up anyways. So I'll trust that you're all using good sources for that, since it's more of a project and not a paper. Thanks for asking.
We still have current events on Friday.
Yes, we will still do current events on Friday. Good question. Okay, oh, and it's time to go. I forgot about the bells, so go ahead and head to your next class. And see you tomorrow, or later today, rather.